Infinite versions of you exist. What if there isn't just one version of you? What if, for every choice you make, for every path you take, a new version of you is born? The version of you that chose the other path, the one who made a different decision, exists somewhere in an alternate universe. Somewhere out there, infinite versions of you are living infinite lives, each shaped by a different series of choices, different circumstances, different realities. The idea that infinite versions of you exist isn't just some wild speculation. It's rooted in deep philosophical and scientific theories, especially in the realm of quantum mechanics and the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics. In this view, every time a decision is made, the universe splits, creating a new version of reality where each possible outcome is realized. Every what-if scenario, every choice you didn't make, every person you didn't meet, every moment you didn't act, all create alternate realities where a different version of you exists, living a life that's just a little bit, or maybe completely, different from yours. You might be familiar with the idea of parallel universes or alternate realities. But have you ever thought about the fact that you might be living many of them simultaneously? Somewhere, there's a version of you who took that job in another city, who chose a different partner, who never left the comfort of home, or who followed an entirely different path. Each of these versions of you is living a life that is unique and separate, yet all of them are you. What does this mean for your sense of identity? It means that the person you consider yourself to be, the person you identify with, the one who experiences the world in a particular way, is just one of many, a singular expression of an infinite potential that has already been realized in different ways. You are, in a sense, not limited to one reality, one set of experiences. In another universe, you could be living a radically different life, making different choices, encountering different struggles, and having entirely different experiences. But it doesn't stop there. It's not just that alternate versions of you exist. The very idea of you becomes fluid, malleable, and constantly shifting. Your sense of self, your identity, is not something static or fixed. It is a culmination of all the possibilities you could be, each one playing out across different realities. So, the version of you reading this is just one small piece of an infinite puzzle of you. Imagine how this could change the way you live your life. If there are infinite versions of you, each one making different choices, facing different challenges, and living out different possibilities, then perhaps it's time to embrace the idea that you are more than what you perceive. You are not bound to one outcome, one set of circumstances, or one life. There's no right path. There's just the path you're on, and countless others you could have walked. In the grand scheme of things, you are an infinite being, with infinite potential, living an infinite number of lives. This raises another question. Do these alternate versions of you have any impact on each other? Can they influence the choices you make in your own reality? Perhaps deep down, the person you are today is the result of not just your own choices, but of the infinite possibilities and experiences of all the other versions of yourself. You may be a manifestation of your past selves, versions of you who have lived and experienced all sorts of things that shape who you are today. So, when you look in the mirror, don't just see one version of you. See the infinite versions that exist across countless realities. See the person you could have been, the person you might still become. You are not limited to the choices you've made in this reality. You are, in essence, every version of yourself that could have been, every possibility realized. The truth is, the infinite versions of you don't just exist. They are constantly unfolding, constantly creating new realities, and constantly making new choices. Every moment you live is just one thread in an infinite web of possibilities. You are the sum of your choices, but also the sum of every other version of yourself that ever could be. And that is something truly extraordinary. How do you know you're not dreaming right now? You wake up, or at least, you think you do. The bed feels familiar. The light leaks in through the blinds the same way it always does. You check your phone, notifications, texts, time. It all lines up. Everything is where it should be. But then again, dreams feel real too, until they don't. Until something breaks the illusion. Until a clock spins the wrong way. Or a voice echoes without a source. Until the colors bleed. Or the ground gives out. But what if this never breaks? What if you never wake up? This is the question that has haunted philosophers for centuries. How do you know you're not dreaming right now? Descartes asked it. So did Zhuangzi, nearly 2,000 years earlier. After dreaming he was a butterfly, Zhuangzi awoke and wondered. Was he a man dreaming he was a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming it was a man? You might laugh this off, point to logic, touch something solid, but here's the problem. Dreams have logic too. They have sensations. You can taste, touch, cry, scream, all inside a dream. Sometimes you're aware it's a dream, sometimes not. But what if the dream you're in is perfect, seamless, undetectable, no strange physics, no melting faces, just your life as it is? Then where's the line between the dream and the waking world? Lucid dreamers know this paradox all too well. They've wandered entire cities in their own minds. They've had full conversations with people who don't exist. They've fallen in love, died, and then opened their eyes, sweating in an empty room. So what separates that from this? Just time? Just continuity? But dreams can be endless, in feeling. Hours, days, years, entire lifetimes. And when you're inside them, they feel as real as anything else. And this isn't just philosophical navel-gazing. Neuroscience still doesn't fully understand consciousness, the thing you're relying on to decide whether or not this is a dream. There is no objective test, no switch you can flip. Reality, as you know it, is a set of perceptions filtered through your senses. And if those perceptions can be fooled by drugs, by dreams, by mental illness, then what exactly is reality anyway? Is it consistency, memory? But memory is fragile, easily altered, rewritten. There are people walking around with false memories implanted in lab experiments. People who remember crimes that never happened. People who vividly recall details of a childhood home that never existed. And so, here's the disturbing part. You might already be dreaming. And if you were, how would you know? Maybe the truth is, you can't, and maybe you never will. Look around. The world hums with life. People rushing past, talking, laughing, fighting, crying. Billions of lives unfolding all at once. But what if none of it is real? Not in the way you think. What if you're the only one who's actually conscious? Not just alone in a room. Alone in existence. This is solipsism, the philosophical idea that only your own mind is certain to exist, that everything else, the world, the people, the voices you hear, even the words you're reading right now, could just be projections of you, from you, for you. And here's the terrifying part. There's no way to prove it wrong. When someone tells you they feel pain, you take their word for it. But you can't feel it with them. You can't enter their mind. All you have is behavior, movement, sound, reactions. But those can be simulated, duplicated, faked. What if that's all they ever were? Like characters in a dream. They talk, they scream, they argue, but you always wake up and they vanish because they were never really there. Now imagine if this world worked the same way. Everyone you know, your family, your best friend, the person you fell in love with. What if they've never had a single conscious thought? What if they're no more self-aware than the NPCs in a video game? Just patterns, just code, just illusions of sentience. You'd never know. They'd respond like real people. They'd cry at funerals, laugh at your jokes, tell you they love you. But so does a mirror when you smile. That doesn't mean it feels anything. It just reflects. And maybe that's all this is. You've never seen another consciousness. You've only seen behaviors, words on a screen, sounds in the air. But have you ever truly touched another mind? Or have you only ever circled your own? What if the universe is a locked room and you're the only one inside? You scream. And it echoes back in the form of a reply. But there's no one on the other side. Just the illusion of company. You were born into a theatre and the actors never break character. But they're not acting because they were never real to begin with. You were just given a script, a stage, and an audience of mannequins. And deep down, some part of you wonders, is that why no one ever really understands you? Why connection feels just out of reach? Why, in a room full of people, you still feel utterly alone? Maybe that's not depression. Maybe it's recognition. Maybe you've always been alone. And maybe you were never meant to know. Why are you you? You wake up every morning and you're just you. Not someone else. Not a stranger. Not a different voice behind the eyes. Just you. Every time. But why? Why are you trapped behind this particular set of eyes? Inside this skull? With this voice? In this body? In this life? Of all the people who have ever lived, why weren't you born as them? Why aren't you sitting across from yourself right now? Why are you the observer and not the observed? Billions of minds have existed, countless perspectives, and yet somehow you ended up here. Consciousness is a lottery with infinite tickets, and somehow this is the one you drew. But what if that's not random? What if your experience of self, your identity, isn't just a biological accident, but something deeper and far more disturbing? What if this you is an illusion, a convenient narrator your brain invented to make sense of chaos? You believe you have a core, a self, a me that lives inside your body. But science can't find it. Neuroscience dissects your brain into thoughts, emotions, memories. But it never finds the you pulling the strings. Just processes, firing neurons, electrical storms. No pilot, just the illusion of one. So what's really in control? Maybe nothing. Maybe you are the story your brain tells itself to stay sane. A hallucination that narrates the chaos. A voice that pretends to own the machine. But here's the unsettling part. If you aren't real, then who's suffering when life hurts? Who's afraid of death? Who's asking this question right now? Or worse, what if you are real, but only because you believe you are? A thought that became self-aware. A dream that realized it was dreaming. and mistook that for being alive. And here's a final question to keep you up tonight. If your consciousness had been placed into someone else's body, someone you've never met, would you still be you? Or are you only you because you don't know how to be anyone else? Is your life on repeat? You wake up, you reach for your phone, you check the time, the messages, the notifications. Then the day begins, or at least it feels like it does. But what if it already has? 1,000 times before, 1,000,000. What if this exact moment, the blink, the breath, the flicker of thought in your skull, has already happened? Not metaphorically, literally. What if you're living a loop, endlessly repeating the same existence over and over, and just don't remember it? It sounds insane, until you realize you can't prove otherwise. You have memories, sure, a past, but memories are fragile. They're not fixed footage. They're reconstructions, mental hallucinations shaped by belief, context, and chemicals. If this moment has already happened, and your brain was reset each time, how would you ever know? You wouldn't. And maybe that's the point. Some say the universe is cyclical, expanding, collapsing, resetting like a breathing lung of time. If that's true, then maybe you're not just stuck in time. Maybe time is stuck in you. A cosmic scratch on the record that plays again and again. The same choices, the same regrets, the same ending. There is no escape, because there never was a first time. And if this is the 1,000th time you've lived this exact life, then how many times have you already died? But it's worse than that. What if your memories aren't being erased between each cycle? What if every night, in the darkest corners of your subconscious, they bleed through? Faint impressions, broken reflections, a lingering discomfort you can't name, a face you swear you've seen before, a street that feels oddly familiar, the haunting suspicion that you've done this before. Because you have. Maybe hundreds of times. And what if that strange voice in your head, the one that whispers, "You've already failed," isn't lying? You might think you have free will, that this time you'll do something different, that now you'll say what you never had the courage to say, chase what you were too afraid to chase. But what if that too is part of the loop? A script pretending to improvise. You feel new, but your patterns aren't. You wake up, you reach for your phone, and it begins again. Maybe déjà vu isn't just a glitch. Maybe it's the echo of a life that keeps repeating, so perfectly, so completely, that even your soul has started to remember. And here's the final question. If this really is your life on repeat, what does it say about you that every time you choose to live it exactly the same way? Or worse, that you can't choose anything else? Did your life start 5 minutes ago? Think about everything you know. Your name, your childhood, the people you love, the scars you carry, physical or otherwise. Think about all the knowledge you've gathered, the memories that define you, your sense of self, your place in the world. Now, here's the question. What if all of that was implanted just 5 minutes ago? What if your entire life, every triumph, heartbreak, moment of joy and trauma, was fabricated, loaded into your mind like a software update? You could have begun existing only 5 minutes ago. There's no way to disprove it. The coffee you're sipping, the ache in your shoulder, the vague plans for tomorrow, all part of a meticulously constructed illusion, a backstory, seamlessly woven into your neurons, a timeline of events you believe happened, but only because something tells you they did. That something is memory. And memory can be hacked. Everything we remember is stored chemically, electrically. Our brain is a fragile hard drive, and we already know how unreliable it is. Eyewitnesses misremember, trauma distorts, dreams feel real. So what happens if you take that fallibility and turn it into a system? A system that starts with a single horrifying assumption. Your life is not what you think it is. This is known as the 5-minute hypothesis, a thought experiment in philosophy that asks, could the universe have come into existence only 5 minutes ago, complete with the appearance of age, history, and memory? It's not just a mental game. It cuts deep into epistemology, the study of how we know what we know. If every book, fossil, and wrinkle on your skin was planted as part of this simulation, then the idea of truth collapses. All knowledge becomes suspect. Even your emotions. Are they real? Or just programmed reactions designed to make the illusion more convincing? You could be the test subject in a controlled experiment, or a consciousness inside a simulation, or a mind floating in nothingness, given just enough sensory input to believe you exist in a consistent world. Maybe the room around you isn't real. Maybe you aren't either. And if that's the case, how can you trust anything? The ache in your chest, the voice in your head, the face in the mirror. Could it all be part of a script you were never meant to question? You think you remember yesterday. You believe there was a before. But that belief is all you have. There is no objective proof. Every memory could be a lie written seconds ago. Every relationship, a phantom bond stitched into your mind. Every tragedy you think shaped you, fabricated. Every lesson you believe you learned, a preloaded thought. This moment, right now, is all you truly have. And even this might be the first time it's ever happened. You'll never know anyone fully. You talk to someone every day. You laugh with them, share meals, secrets, plans. Maybe you grew up together. Maybe you sleep beside them at night. You think you know them. But what if you don't? What if no one really knows anyone? You see fragments, a smile, a choice, a story told in passing. You gather data points, patterns, and create a version of them in your head. But it's just that, a version, a shadow, an echo distorted by your own bias, memory, and hopes. The person you think they are may only exist in your perception. And the scary part, they're doing the exact same thing to you. This isn't just about secrets. It's deeper. It's the fundamental barrier of consciousness. You will never truly know what another person is thinking. You can never feel what they feel. Not really. You can ask questions, hear their words, but you'll never be inside their mind. You'll never feel the full weight of their regrets, the real shape of their fears, the strange mix of love, guilt, hate, and confusion that lives beneath their smile. They could be suffering while laughing, plotting while hugging, or worse, they could be nothing like the person they've shown you. Every human being has a secret world inside them, entire universes of thought and memory and darkness they will never share. Not because they're hiding, but because some parts are simply unreachable. Even they might not understand those parts. There's a terrifying intimacy to this truth. The person you trust most may be a stranger in disguise. Not because they're lying, but because they're human. Because none of us are fully knowable. Not even to ourselves. You can stand beside someone for decades and still not know the full extent of their desires, their pain, or their potential for cruelty, or for love. And here's the real paradox. We crave to be understood, but we are fundamentally alone inside our minds. You can tell someone your story, your truth, but they'll interpret it through their lens, their history, their assumptions. Even in our most vulnerable moments, we're still behind glass, close, but unreachable. It's like trying to kiss someone through a mirror. Every relationship you've ever had is based on incomplete information, a guess, a leap of faith. We pretend we understand each other to make the world feel safer. But deep down, something lingers, a gnawing doubt. What if I don't really know them? And worse, what if they don't know me at all? What happens when you die? Everything stops, not with a scream, not with a whisper, just silence. A final breath that doesn't come back. Your heart, once beating without your permission, gives up. And then, stillness. But that's just the body. That's just the shell. What about you? What happens to the voice in your head? The one asking this very question. For centuries, we've told stories to soften the truth. Heaven, hell, reincarnation, transcendence. We dress death up in meaning to avoid looking into the void, because the truth might be worse than pain. It might be nothing. No light, no tunnel, no afterlife, just the end of experience, the end of self. The moment you die, it might be as if you never lived at all. You don't fade into blackness, because even blackness is something. This is different. This is the absence of all things. A void so complete, you'll never even know it happened. But that raises another question. If consciousness simply stops, why does it start? What flickers the light on in the first place? Why are you the one behind your eyes, living this life, this timeline? Was it random? Was it designed? Or worse, is it a loop? Maybe death isn't the end. Maybe it's a reset. Maybe you've died before, 1,000 times, 1,000,000, and each time you're dropped back at the start, forgetting everything, forced to live again, not because of karma, not because of punishment, but because you're trapped, like a fly in amber. A soul that can't stop replaying the same film, believing it's the first time every time. Or maybe there is an afterlife, but not the kind we imagine. Maybe you wake up in a world beyond this one, a higher layer, a simulation's exit room, a place where you review your life like a file, examine what went wrong. Then you're asked a single question. Do you want to try again? And what if you say yes? Not because life was good, but because you need closure. You need answers you never got. You need to say something you never said. And so, you're reborn, not as someone else, but as you again. Same script, same pain, just a new roll of the dice. But there's another possibility, one we rarely speak aloud. What if when you die, you wake up? Not metaphorically, literally. What if this, all of this, was the dream? What if your entire life was the brief flicker of a thought in another reality, and death is simply the alarm clock? And when you open your eyes, you don't remember this place at all. Just a strange echo of emotion you can't explain. A sense of déjà vu you'll carry forever, never knowing why. So, what happens when you die? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Or maybe it's already happened, and this is just the part you didn't expect. Does the universe need you? Look around. Planets spin in silence. Stars are born, live for billions of years, and die in supernova screams. And not once do they ask for your permission. Galaxies drift apart in a cold cosmic ballet, the laws of physics holding it all together with brutal precision. Nowhere in that endless choreography is your name written. The universe doesn't seem to need you. And yet, here you are, thinking, wondering, asking questions the stars will never care to answer. You, a fragile creature made of carbon and memory, looking into a sky so old and vast it should crush you with indifference. And yet, it doesn't. It just keeps going, silent and unknowable, as if you were never here. So, does the universe need you? Not in the way you hope. It doesn't need your dreams, your fears, your victories, or your grief. It doesn't pause when you suffer. It doesn't mourn when you die. Your existence is less than a flicker in its timeline, a breath in a hurricane. And when you're gone, the cosmos will not notice. No divine council will gather to mark your absence. It will simply continue, without you. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe it's not about whether the universe needs you, but whether you were ever meant to notice the universe at all. Because if you were just a meaningless accident, just atoms bouncing into each other for no reason, then why are you aware of any of this? Why do you care? Why does the universe, in its cold, unconscious vastness, produce beings capable of looking at it and wondering why? You are a speck, yes, but a speck that can contemplate infinity, a machine made of dust, asking why it exists. The universe doesn't need you, but maybe that's the miracle. Because if it doesn't need you, yet you still exist, then you are not inevitable. You are impossible. A crack in the pattern, a cosmic mistake that learned to ask questions. And in that sense, maybe you are exactly what the universe didn't know it was missing. Because without you, there would be no eyes to witness the stars, no ears to hear the silence, no mind to tremble at the thought of eternity. You give the universe a voice, even if it never asked for one. So no, it doesn't need you, but it has you. And what you choose to do with that might be the only thing that truly matters. What if time isn't real? We live by it, die by it. Everything you are, everything you've ever done, has been chained to the ticking hands of a clock. Seconds turning into minutes, minutes into hours, hours into a lifetime. Time is the prison we never see, the invisible current we're all swept along by. But what if it's not real? What if the past, present, and future are just illusions stitched together by your brain? A desperate attempt to make sense of chaos. Because here's the terrifying truth. Physics doesn't need time. Einstein shattered the idea of a universal now over a century ago. In his view, time and space are just coordinates. No moment is more real than another. The past isn't gone. The future isn't waiting. They all exist, simultaneously, like pages in a book you can't read all at once. You think you're moving through time, but maybe time is already there, and you're just flipping through the illusion of choice. If time isn't real, then neither is change. Every version of you, the child, the teenager, the older self you haven't met yet, they're all still out there, frozen in place. You feel the passage of time, but that might just be your consciousness sliding across a predetermined path, like a needle tracing a vinyl record. You're not living your life, you're playing it back. And if that's true, then what does it mean for free will? Can you change something that's already written? Are you really deciding your future, or just acting out a role scripted by something far bigger and far colder than you? Think about your memories. They feel like the past, but they only exist in your mind, fragile, distorted, reassembled every time you recall them. The past isn't somewhere you can visit, it's something you reconstruct. And the future, just a story you tell yourself to make sense of the unknown. What you think of as now might be nothing more than a trick of perception, a moving spotlight on a stage that's already been built. Even time itself begins to break down under scrutiny. At the quantum level, particles don't behave in ways that respect time at all. They jump, they vanish, they interfere with themselves as if they exist in multiple moments simultaneously. It's not that time is weird. It's that time might not even exist the way we think it does. But that raises a darker question. If time isn't real, why do we suffer? Why do we age? Why do we fear the end? Because we're not built to live outside of time. Our biology is wired to believe in beginnings and endings. Our minds are linear, desperate for narrative. We need time to be real. We need the future to matter. The alternative is unbearable, so we build calendars, set alarms, watch the seconds disappear on our phones, all to convince ourselves that time is solid, that it moves forward, that we're going somewhere. But maybe we're not. Maybe we're stuck in a moment that never ends, hallucinating time as we spiral through an eternal frozen universe. And if that's true, then what does it mean to live? What does it mean to die? And who, or what, pressed play? You never live in the present. You think you do. You tell yourself that right now, in this very moment, you're alive, conscious, experiencing the world as it is. But are you? The present doesn't actually exist in the way you imagine. It's a fleeting, impossible thing. A sliver of time so minuscule, it can't even be measured. The moment you think you're living in is already gone. When you experience something, whether it's a conversation, a memory, or a beautiful sunset, you're not actually experiencing it in the present. You're experiencing a memory of it. Your brain is constantly behind, processing reality just a tiny fraction of a second after it happens. The now you cling to is already a reflection, distorted by your senses and filtered through your perception. In fact, by the time you think you've arrived at the present moment, you've already missed it. The human brain can't process information instantly. It needs time to interpret, organize, and store what it takes in. Your experience of life is a delayed reaction, a playback of past events, constantly being updated in your mind. So, when you think you're living in the present, you're actually living in the past. Consider how you remember things. A conversation you had minutes ago, a feeling you had moments ago. It's already a reconstruction. You don't remember events as they happened. You remember them as your mind interprets them. Even your most vivid memories are distorted, reshaped by time, emotions, and the patterns your brain creates to make sense of it all. When we think of time, we imagine it as a linear flow, past, present, and future. But is that how we experience it? The moment you hear a sound, the time it took for the sound waves to reach you has already passed. When you see a light, the image is already a fraction of a second old. You're living in the echoes, not the original. Think about the way you plan your day or anticipate the future. Do you ever truly live in the now? You're either reminiscing about the past, imagining a future, or planning your next move. The present, the true present, remains always out of reach. It's like trying to hold water in your hand. It slips away before you can grasp it. We try to find moments of stillness, meditation, mindfulness. We're told to focus on the present, to let go of the past and future. But it's an illusion. Even in those still moments, we're only experiencing the present as our minds allow us to. It's like standing on the edge of a rushing river, trying to touch the water as it moves downstream. By the time you extend your hand, the water's already gone. And what about those moments when everything seems to slow down? When you feel like you're truly experiencing the now, as if time itself has stopped? Maybe it hasn't. Maybe you're just perceiving it differently. The gap between what's happening and what your mind processes becoming larger. What feels like the present is just a fleeting image in the mirror, always a little out of reach. So, are you ever truly living in the present? Perhaps the greatest paradox is this. As hard as we try to be here, in this moment, the only time we can ever live is in the past, as it's remembered. Because once it's gone, it's only in the mind. All of life is a beautiful trick, a constant play of images, feelings, and thoughts that we stitch together into a story we call now. But it's never really here. You've been told that you are the architect of your thoughts, the master of your mind, that you can shape your reality, choose your beliefs, and determine the way you see the world. But what if that's not true? What if you didn't design your mind at all? What if the very thoughts you believe are your own are just echoes, programmed by forces far beyond your control? Think about it. Your mind wasn't created by you. From the moment you were born, it was shaped by everything around you: your family, society, culture, experiences, and even your biology. Your thoughts, beliefs, and perceptions are not purely yours. They are products of an environment you didn't choose, a world you didn't design. Every piece of knowledge, every concept you grasp, was handed to you by someone else. You didn't come up with the concept of time. You didn't invent the idea of good and evil. You didn't create the language you speak, or the ways you think in it. Your mind is not a blank slate. It's a tapestry of influences, interwoven with the threads of your surroundings and your genes, the neural pathways in your brain, the way you process emotions, the biases you carry. All of it was formed long before you had any say in it. Even your very perception of reality is based on the rules of the world around you, not on an objective truth. Your mind is not an isolated entity. It's part of a system, conditioned by nature and nurture in ways you can barely comprehend. And then there's your consciousness, that sense of self that you carry with you, believing it to be the real you. But who are you, really? Are you your thoughts? Or is your mind simply hosting thoughts that it has no control over? The idea of you is as much an illusion as the thoughts that make it up. And the most frightening part? You didn't choose it. You didn't design this mind of yours. The beliefs you hold today, the opinions you stand by, they were shaped by countless factors. Your childhood, your teachers, the media you consume, your genetic predispositions, all of these things shaped the way you think. You believe you're a unique individual, but are you really? Or are you just a product of everything that's been forced into your mind? Everything that's been fed to you from the moment you could comprehend the world? You're told to be an independent thinker, but in reality, you're constrained by the structure of your mind. Your mind is a machine, built from the raw materials of a world you didn't create. Your thoughts are influenced by patterns, preconceptions, and cognitive biases that you didn't choose. You may believe you're in control, but your mind is a reflection of everything you've encountered, from the language you speak to the expectations society has placed on you. Even the way you feel, the emotions that govern your actions, they're all part of a biological process. a result of chemicals, hormones, and evolutionary drives that you had no hand in shaping. Even your desires, your hopes and dreams, are they truly yours? Or are they echoes of what society has told you is valuable? Your desire for success, love, and recognition, where did that come from? What if your mind is like a puppet, and you're not the one pulling the strings? What if your identity, your sense of self, is nothing more than a story told by forces beyond your comprehension? The most terrifying realization is that no matter how much you think you control your mind, it's always been out of your hands. The foundation of your consciousness, the way you interpret the world, and the way you perceive yourself. It's all the result of external forces and internal mechanisms that were beyond your influence. You never had a hand in creating your mind. And yet, it's the very thing you identify with the most. You didn't design your mind. It was designed for you. And that leaves a question. If you didn't create your mind, then who did? And what does that mean for the you think you are? Are you just a thought? You are standing here, thinking. You feel your body. You know you're here, existing. But what if all of that is just a thought? What if your sense of self, your perception of your own existence, is nothing more than a fleeting construct of your mind? We walk through life convinced that we are real, solid, tangible beings. But are we? Everything we experience, every feeling, every perception, is processed by our mind. And our mind is always shifting, changing, interpreting reality through its own lens. The moment you try to grasp onto a sense of self, it slips away, vanishing into the depths of your mind. Is that self anything more than an idea? Just a thought, a fleeting notion that passes through your consciousness without ever truly existing in any concrete form? Think about it. Your entire sense of being is built on thoughts. The thought that you're here, the thought that you are you, the thought that you exist in the way you think you do. You can't escape it. You can't experience the world without it being filtered through your mind. If you were to lose your ability to think, to process the world around you, what would be left? Could you even know you existed without your thoughts telling you so? Now consider this. The only thing you truly have direct access to is your own mind. You can never step outside yourself and experience the world objectively. You see, hear, and feel through the lens of your thoughts, your mind. Every perception is shaped, molded, and interpreted by the brain. The same brain that, without your knowledge, creates the illusion of you. The concept of self is built from memories, experiences, desires, and even those fleeting moments of consciousness that you believe define who you are. But where is you in all of that? Is your true essence buried beneath the layers of thought? Or is it nothing more than a thought itself? A thought created by your own mind to explain the unexplainable, to ground the vastness of existence into something that can be comprehended. Perhaps you are nothing more than a thought, a product of your brain's ceaseless activity, a fleeting blip in the vastness of the universe. You are born from the firing of neurons, the connections that make up your thoughts, your identity, your very reality. And like all thoughts, you are temporary, impermanent. You exist as long as the mind allows it, and you vanish when the mind lets go. It's unsettling to think about, but the truth is that we can never prove our existence without the very thoughts we claim define us. Without thoughts, there is no sense of I, there is no you. Only the silent void and the thoughts that bring you back into being. moment after moment. The question is, what happens if you stop thinking? Would you cease to exist? Would the thought of you disappear entirely, leaving nothing in its wake? And if that happens, were you ever truly here at all? Are you just a thought? The answer is one you may never fully know. Why is there anything at all? Why does anything exist? Why is there a universe, a world, a you? It's a question that seems so simple, yet it's perhaps the most profound mystery that human minds have ever encountered. We take existence for granted, but when you stop and really think about it, the very fact that there is something, anything, instead of nothing, is deeply puzzling. At first glance, it seems like the most basic thing in the world. After all, we live in a world filled with objects, life, and events. But why is there a world in the first place? What caused it to be here? And why couldn't there just be nothing? Why isn't there just an infinite void, devoid of stars, planets, and all the things we know to exist? The very nature of existence itself seems like a cosmic accident, one we can never truly explain. Take a moment and consider. There could have been nothing at all. No time, no space, no universe, no life. Just an eternal emptiness, completely devoid of experience. And yet, here we are, sitting in a world teeming with life, movement, sound, colour, and thought. The most basic question, then, is why this should be so. Why, against all odds, does something exist? The answer, or lack thereof, is what drives some of the deepest philosophical inquiries. Some argue that existence is simply a given, an inevitability that cannot be questioned. The universe exists because it exists, they might say, and that's all there is to it. But this answer doesn't satisfy everyone. The concept of nothingness is just as conceivable, if not more so, than the notion of something. Why then does that nothingness never come to be? One theory is that the universe, or existence itself, is eternal, that there's no need for a cause. Existence simply always was, always will be. But even this doesn't escape the problem of why there is anything in the first place, rather than an endless, eternal emptiness. If the universe always existed, why is there still something, and not nothing? What set it into motion, if anything? Another answer lies in the realms of physics and cosmology. Theories such as quantum mechanics suggest that nothingness may not actually be possible. In the quantum world, empty space is never truly empty. It's filled with quantum fields that give rise to particles and energy at random. Could it be that nothing is not even a state that the universe can occupy, and therefore existence is the only possibility? Then there are those who look to the idea of a creator, a higher power, or a divine force, which many argue is the source of everything. But this introduces a whole new set of questions. If the universe requires a cause, then what caused the creator? And why do they exist? This leads us into an infinite regress, a chain of causes with no beginning. What we're left with is the staggering reality that we may never fully understand why anything exists at all. The question itself might be unanswerable, forever beyond our grasp. Perhaps, in the end, existence is not a question we are meant to answer, but something we must simply accept, however incomprehensible it may be. Maybe the question of, why is there anything at all, is itself an invitation to explore the very nature of reality, to wonder, to question, to imagine, and perhaps that sense of wonder is the only answer we'll ever have. So, why is there anything at all? Perhaps the answer is simply that there is no answer. Or perhaps we are the answer, the living, breathing question that the universe has chosen to ask. Who are you? You think you know, right? You know who you are today, you remember who you were yesterday, and you feel like you can confidently say that the you from yesterday is the same as the you of today. But is that really the case? Let's start with something simple. You change. Every moment, every experience, every thought, every feeling subtly shifts who you are. Your cells are constantly regenerating. Your brain is constantly rewiring itself based on the things you encounter, and your understanding of the world and yourself evolves with time. The person you were, even just a few hours ago, or a day ago, is not entirely the same person you are now. It's not just that you've learned new things, or had different experiences. It's that, on a deeper level, you've changed biologically, psychologically, and emotionally. Imagine that the you were yesterday is like a snapshot, a frozen moment in time. But the you right now is not frozen. It's dynamic, constantly moving, constantly evolving. It's like a river. The water may look the same at a glance, but it's never the same water twice. Every moment, new water flows in, old water flows out. It's never static. Just like the water, what if your mind is lying constantly in flux right now, constantly evolving? It's a disturbing thought. Even if you don't always notice, suggests the subtle it might not be far from the truth. Every conversation your mind doesn't passively reflect every choice you make. It constructs every glance you cast. Everything you see, these interactions leave a trace and feel a ripple in your mind. Is filtered through layers of assumptions, biases, your thoughts shift, and prior experience. Your emotions change. Your brain edits the raw data before you're even aware of it. Even if you can't consciously pinpoint every change, is actually your brain filling in gaps, smoothing over contradictions, feeling of continuity and choosing what matters most. The idea that you're the same person every day, you're not seeing the world is more of an illusion than reality. You're seeing a best guess. But here's the thing. Memory is even less something to fear or mourn. You recall events as stories. It's a reminder of the incredible fluidity of life. Every time you revisit a memory for growth and transformation, small distortions pile up. Yet you're not bound by the version of the past, by the person you were yesterday. The mind lies in comforting ways. You have the ability to grow, to learn, by ignoring inconvenient truths. Just like the river that never runs dry. Guilt, always moving forward, sense of control, always becoming something new. Cognitive dissonance lets you believe two contradictory things at once. You don't even need to look very far to notice this change. And then there's perception. Take a moment to think about how you've evolved in the last year. Prove your brain can be tricked. Your values might have shifted. Phantom pains show that your priorities might have changed, no longer exist. And even your personality, even your sense of might have been influenced by the experiences you've had. Is a fragile construction. The you from yesterday, split brain not even recognize the you of today. Suggests the mind can fracture and still function. That's calling into question whether there's ever been just you're alive. You. And proof that you have the power to redefine yourself at any moment. And even your identity, you're not the same person you were yesterday by your brain. And tomorrow, how do you know what's true? You won't be the same person you are today. You don't. Every day offers a new chance. A new opportunity dream of a dying mind. Maybe you'll change for the better. Question. Maybe not. One that blurs the lines between reality be who you were yesterday. And that's what if everything around you, your experience, the question isn't your memory different from yesterday. Your very existence, the real question is nothing more than the fading remnants of someone else's consciousness. A mind on the brink of death, dreaming up the last images, sounds, and sensations before it fades into oblivion. When you dream, your brain creates entire worlds, populated by people, places, and events that feel as real as the waking world. But, like all dreams, they are illusions, projections of a subconscious mind. Could the same thing be happening in our waking life? Could our perception of reality be the byproduct of a mind that's nearing its end? A mind whose final thoughts are so powerful, they bring an entire universe into existence. This idea challenges our most fundamental understanding of what is real. We often think of our existence as something concrete, something grounded in physical space and time. But if you could be the dream of a dying mind, all of that becomes suspect. The universe around you, the people you love, the memories you cherish. What if they are nothing more than fleeting images created in the mind of someone who no longer exists? In this scenario, everything you believe to be true could be a figment of someone else's imagination, an illusion conjured up in the final moments of their life. Imagine that the very fabric of time and space is merely the dream of a consciousness that can no longer hold on to the world it once knew. What would that mean for you, the dreamer, or the dream itself? Would you still be the same person you think you are? Or would your identity simply dissolve as the mind that created you slips away? If you were part of someone's final dream, could you ever truly know it? What does it mean to exist if your entire world is a fleeting fantasy, a mere echo of something that once was but no longer is? If you accept the possibility that you could be a dream of a dying mind, the concept of existence itself becomes much more fragile. It raises profound questions about the nature of consciousness and the mind's ability to create reality. Is everything you experience just the mind's attempt to hold on to something, to keep it alive, even as it fades? And if everything you know could be a temporary illusion, what does it mean to live a real life? This thought experiment may sound far-fetched, but it shares similarities with ancient philosophical musings, like Descartes' question of how we can be sure of anything at all. If the mind can generate entire worlds in dreams, how can we know that our waking experience is any different? Could everything we perceive, from the physical world to our deepest emotions, simply be a projection, a construct of a mind slipping into nothingness? In this sense, you may not be a person at all, but rather a fleeting thought, a brief moment of consciousness that will dissipate when the mind that dreamed you fades away. What does that mean for your life? Are your thoughts, actions, and emotions just echoes of a dying mind's attempt to hold on to life for just a little longer? Could your entire existence be nothing more than a dream that's about to vanish, leaving no trace behind? The possibility that we could be the dream of a dying mind forces us to confront the very nature of reality. It challenges us to consider that everything we experience, all of it, could be an illusion, a beautiful, terrifying illusion. And in the end, it may be impossible to know for certain if we're living in the real world or simply the final dream of someone else's consciousness, slipping into the unknown. Is reality just a consensus hallucination? This question invites a deep dive into the nature of reality itself, suggesting that what we perceive as real might be nothing more than a collective illusion, a shared hallucination, agreed upon by society. It's a mind-bending thought that challenges the very foundation of how we understand the world around us. At its core, the idea implies that reality is not a fixed, objective truth, but a product of collective human agreement. Everything we see, touch, and experience could be a construction, a story we tell ourselves and others to make sense of our existence. Much like how our individual dreams are a mixture of the subconscious mind's projections, what we call reality might be a collective hallucination crafted by the minds of billions of people. Think about it. Every aspect of the world we experience is filtered through our senses. We rely on sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell to interpret the external world. Yet these senses are inherently subjective. What we see, hear, and feel is not a direct perception of the outside world, but rather a mental representation of it. Our brains process sensory information, and through complex neurological mechanisms, we construct what we believe to be the world. But what if that construction isn't individual? What if the reality we all experience is shaped by a social contract, an agreement among us to interpret the world in a certain way? This idea isn't entirely new. Philosophers like Immanuel Kant have long suggested that we don't experience the world as it is, but only as it appears to us, through the lens of our sensory perception and cognition. Our mind actively organizes and structures the chaos of sensory input, creating a coherent picture of reality. But Kant also argued that there's an unknowable thing in itself, the true reality, which is beyond our comprehension. What if this unknowable reality is not just inaccessible to the individual, but is fundamentally shaped by a collective understanding? The notion of a consensus hallucination extends this idea into the realm of social constructionism, where the boundaries of reality are not set by objective facts, but by what societies collectively agree upon. Language, culture, history, and even science itself are examples of this social agreement. They are frameworks that allow us to communicate and interact within the world, but they are not the world itself. The reality we all experience is shaped by the shared meanings we place on things, not by their inherent properties. For example, money is just paper or metal, but we collectively agree that it has value. Similarly, societal norms and laws are human-made constructs that govern how we behave and interact with each other. Yet we all accept these constructs as real and necessary. When we agree upon certain definitions of reality, such as what is true, what is just, and what is possible, we create a shared hallucination. One person might believe that the earth is flat, while another believes it's round. However, both individuals are interpreting reality through the lens of their own experiences, cultural influences, and societal conditioning. The world they perceive is shaped by their unique perceptions and the consensus they share with others in their cultural or social group. If enough people believe in the same things, those beliefs become real for the group, and the boundaries of reality are drawn around those shared perceptions. But here's where it gets even more unsettling. If reality is just a consensus hallucination, can it ever be truly objective? Is there any way for us to escape the limitations of our collective understanding? How do we know that the reality we experience is the same reality experienced by others? If everyone's consciousness is essentially a private world, how can we be sure that the reality we perceive is anything more than a figment of the collective imagination? Moreover, how can we account for the vast discrepancies between individuals' perceptions? Consider the way people from different cultures interpret the world differently. What is considered beautiful, true, or moral can vary widely, suggesting that reality is not a one-size-fits-all experience. Could this imply that our collective hallucination is not only subjective, but fragmented? That each person constructs their own version of reality, even as they interact within the shared illusion? The concept of a consensus hallucination also raises profound questions about the nature of knowledge and truth. If reality is constructed by human minds, does truth become a social agreement rather than an objective fact? In such a world, science, history, and logic might be seen as human-made systems of meaning, rather than reflections of an independent external reality. This creates an existential dilemma. If what we consider real is merely a shared belief, can we ever truly know anything for certain? Even more unsettling is the possibility that the entire universe, with its galaxies, stars, and laws of physics might be nothing more than a product of the collective minds of billions of people, a hallucination that we all share because we are conditioned to see it in the same way. This doesn't necessarily mean that the world is a lie, but rather that the world is what we agree it is. The objective reality we think exists outside of us is a byproduct of our shared perceptions, limited by the cultural, historical, and biological conditioning of the species. Ultimately, the idea that reality could be a consensus hallucination calls into question everything we think we know. It forces us to reconsider the relationship between the mind, the world, and the nature of existence. It suggests that reality is not something fixed and external, but something fluid, constructed, and shaped by the minds that experience it. And in doing so, it challenges the very idea that we can ever truly know what is real, or if reality is even something we can ever fully grasp. Perhaps we're all just participants in an elaborate, ongoing collective dream, each of us shaping and reshaping the world as we go, never fully able to escape the constraints of our collective perceptions. In the end, it's possible that the only true reality is the one we agree upon. And that reality, much like a dream, may be more fragile and subjective than we're willing to admit. What if consciousness is a prison, not a gift? This question flips one of the most celebrated aspects of human existence on its head. We often think of consciousness, our ability to be aware, to think, and to experience, as a gift, a remarkable feature that separates us from other living beings. But what if it's not a gift at all? What if it's actually a prison, trapping us in a cycle of endless self-awareness and suffering? The idea of consciousness as a prison may seem unsettling, but it's an intriguing thought experiment. After all, consciousness brings with it a heavy burden. We are not only aware of the world around us, but we are also acutely aware of ourselves. We can reflect on our past, imagine our future, and most importantly, we can think about our own thinking. This constant self-awareness is both a source of creativity and innovation, but it also gives rise to anxiety, regret, and existential dread. What if our consciousness keeps us tethered to a cycle of suffering? Unlike animals, who live more in the present moment and are driven by instinct and survival, humans have the capacity to dwell on the past and worry about the future. This can create a perpetual state of unease. We're constantly preoccupied with the meaning of life, the inevitability of death, and the vast unknowns of existence. The more we think, the more we become aware of the potential for pain and loss, making us prisoners to our own thoughts. Furthermore, the very structure of consciousness can trap us in a continuous loop of dissatisfaction. In psychological terms, this is often referred to as the monkey mind, the constant churning of thoughts that never seem to settle. The more we try to focus or find peace, the more our minds can spiral into distractions, self-doubt, and worries about things beyond our control. This is an experience familiar to many. We can't shut off our thoughts, even when we want to. In this way, our consciousness keeps us bound, unable to escape the incessant chatter of the mind. What's more, consciousness forces us to confront the very real truth of our mortality. We're not like other animals, who may be unaware of the existential threat of death. Humans are acutely aware that one day, our lives will end. This awareness, though it can inspire us to live with purpose, can also be paralyzing. The knowledge that we are temporary, that all our efforts may eventually fade into nothingness, can create a sense of hopelessness. Our consciousness gives us the ability to reflect on this harsh reality, but it also leaves us grappling with the question of what to do with that knowledge. If consciousness is a prison, then perhaps it's the burden of self-awareness that creates our suffering. Consider the concept of the self. While it's central to human experience, it's also a construct. The self is the product of a constant stream of thoughts, memories, and emotions that we identify with. But what if this sense of self is the very thing that imprisons us? By clinging to a self-concept, we create the illusion of a separate I, a distinct identity that is constantly trying to protect, enhance, and sustain itself. The result is a never-ending struggle for validation, security, and meaning. This brings us to the paradox of human experience. The more we seek happiness and fulfillment, the more elusive they often become. We chase after pleasure, success, and love, hoping they will free us from our existential cage. Yet these external rewards often fail to bring lasting satisfaction. Why? Because they don't solve the core issue, the internal awareness that we are, in fact, conscious beings, forever tethered to our minds and bodies. We might find fleeting moments of peace or joy, but the shadow of our self-awareness always lurks just beneath the surface. The concept of consciousness as a prison also brings to mind philosophical ideas, like those found in existentialism. Thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre argued that humans are condemned to be free. That is, we are burdened by the responsibility of making choices and defining our own existence. This freedom, though seemingly empowering, can also feel like a heavy weight, as it forces us to confront the possibility that we are alone in creating meaning in an indifferent universe. Moreover, the very notion of being conscious may not be as natural as it seems. There are creatures in the world that seem to exist without the same kind of awareness or reflective thought. Animals, for example, often live purely in the moment, driven by instinct and immediate needs, unburdened by the abstract concept of self. They don't dwell on past mistakes or worry about future regrets. For them, existence is simpler, more immediate, and more focused on survival. The question arises, would we be better off living like them, free from the constant inner dialogue that defines human consciousness? Of course, there's a counter-argument to this bleak view. Consciousness is also the source of all creativity, meaning, and innovation. It enables us to imagine, dream, and connect with others in profound ways. It allows us to find joy in art, beauty, love, and knowledge. Without consciousness, we would never experience the richness of life, nor would we have the capacity to shape the world around us. So while consciousness might feel like a prison at times, it is also the key that unlocks the full depth of human experience. In the end, the question of whether consciousness is a prison or a gift may not have a definitive answer. It seems to be both. While it brings us suffering, it also allows for growth, understanding, and connection. The very awareness of our own existence is what makes life meaningful, yet it is also what makes life so difficult to navigate. Ultimately, consciousness is a double-edged sword, capable of both liberating and trapping us, sometimes simultaneously. What if you're already dead, and this is the afterglow? The idea that we might be dead and unaware of it has long been a subject of fascination, fear, and philosophical pondering. It raises profound questions about the nature of life, death, and consciousness. What if this reality, everything we experience, is simply a product of our minds, lingering in some form of post-death existence? What if the sensations, thoughts, and perceptions you're having right now are nothing more than the final flicker of awareness after the body has ceased to function? This line of thought challenges the very essence of what we believe life is. We generally think of life as something that can be definitively distinguished from death. You live, then you die, and there's a clear end to one and a beginning of the other. But what if that division is not so clear? What if death isn't a complete cessation of consciousness, but merely a transition into a different state of being, one that we can't fully comprehend while alive? If this is the afterglow of a life that has already ended, what does it mean for our understanding of existence? In this view, everything we perceive, our relationships, our choices, even our thoughts about our past and future, might be nothing more than an after effect of a life that is no longer truly ongoing. The fact that we feel as though we are consciously experiencing the world, perceiving new information, making decisions, and interacting with others could be a trick played by our minds, continuing to run on some kind of posthumous autopilot. If we are already dead, then what we think of as time, progress, and change is just a lingering echo of our previous life, as if our mind is unable or unwilling to fully disconnect from the world. In a way, this theory can be liberating, offering a sense of freedom from the constraints of life. If we're already dead, the pressures of living might lose their weight. There would be no need to worry about the future, because the future is already a thing of the past. The pain, fear, and anxiety that often accompany the awareness of our mortality might simply vanish, leaving only the serene detachment of the afterglow. The suffering that typically accompanies life's existential questions might fade into the background, as we might not be truly alive to experience them. But then again, this notion also poses some disturbing possibilities. If we are dead and unaware, what does it say about the nature of our existence? Is consciousness merely a temporary phenomenon that fades away once the body ceases to function? Are we trapped in some kind of existential loop, forever wandering in this state of afterglow without a true end? What if there is no real afterlife, and what we perceive as living is merely a lingering memory of a life that has already passed? The idea that you're already dead also casts a shadow over the way we understand the afterlife. If our consciousness continues to exist after death, then what exactly is the nature of that existence? Is this world simply a projection of our minds after we've left our physical bodies behind? And if so, are we creating the world around us in some way? Could we be living in a self-created illusion, one that allows us to process the events of our life even after its physical conclusion? On a more philosophical level, this concept forces us to question the nature of consciousness itself. Is consciousness tied to the biological processes of the brain, or could it be something that persists even after death, albeit in a different form? If consciousness can exist outside of the body, then what does that imply about the nature of reality and the soul? Are we more than just our physical bodies? And is the afterglow of death an indication that consciousness transcends our biological limits? Another intriguing angle comes from the idea of eternal recurrence. What if the afterglow we are experiencing is just a brief flicker before we repeat our lives again? Perhaps what we perceive as the end of our lives is not an end at all, but a constant cycle where we continue to relive our experiences in some form. If this is the case, it raises profound questions about free will and personal agency. Are we truly in control of our lives? Or are we simply going through the motions of a predetermined existence, trapped in an eternal loop of afterglow? It also brings into question the nature of memory and perception. If we are already dead, then our memories of the past might be distorted by the fact that we no longer have the faculties to fully engage with them. What if the way we remember our past lives is inaccurate, shaped by the incomplete nature of our consciousness? And if this current experience is merely the afterglow of something that has already ended, then how much of it is real? How much of our reality is simply a product of our mind's attempt to hold on to the world it once knew? In the end, the idea that we might already be dead forces us to confront our deepest fears and assumptions about life, death, and the nature of existence. It challenges us to think differently about what it means to live and die, and whether consciousness is truly tied to the physical body, or if it could persist beyond it. While unsettling, it also offers a profound opportunity to reconsider our place in the universe and to explore what happens after death, or if, in fact, we are still experiencing it. Whether this is an afterglow or the continuation of something much larger is a mystery that may never be fully understood. But it leaves us with a chilling question. What if we've never really left at all? What if you've already lived this life, thousands of times? This concept may seem far-fetched, but the idea that we might be trapped in an endless cycle of repetition, reliving the same experiences over and over, is both fascinating and unsettling. Imagine, for a moment, that the life you are living right now is not your first. It may not even be your 100th or 1000th. What if you've already lived this exact existence countless times, each time with the same events, the same decisions, the same outcomes, but with no memory of the past cycles? This notion, often referred to as eternal recurrence, presents a paradoxical and intriguing exploration of existence, free will, and the meaning of life. The concept of eternal recurrence suggests that time is not linear, but cyclical. It implies that everything you've experienced, every decision you've made, and every person you've encountered could be part of an infinite loop. You might find yourself going through the motions of life, seemingly unaware that the very moments you are living are not new at all, but a part of a vast, repetitive cycle. If true, it would mean that your entire existence, all the joy, sorrow, success, failure, love, and loss, has happened before, is happening now, and will happen again, forever. This idea challenges our understanding of free will. If you have lived this life thousands of times, how much control do you really have over your choices? Are you truly making decisions, or are you simply replaying the script that's already been written for you? If every decision you make is part of a predetermined cycle, can you ever truly change the outcome of your life? Or is your destiny locked in an unbreakable loop? On the other hand, if you somehow do have the power to alter the course of your life, what does that say about the nature of your existence? Is the possibility of change just an illusion? Or are you part of a grand, unknowable design that allows you to shape the outcome of this eternal cycle? Another intriguing aspect of this idea is the question of memory. If you've lived this life thousands of times, why don't you remember the past cycles? Perhaps, in each repetition, your memories are wiped clean, as though the universe has decided that you cannot retain the knowledge of your previous lives. Or maybe the act of remembering would make the cycle unbearable, leading to some kind of existential crisis. Without memories of the past cycles, each life feels like a fresh beginning, but it is always ultimately the same. The thought that we may be stuck in this kind of repetitive existence leads to an exploration of the nature of time. What is the nature of the passage of time if we are repeating our lives? Is time truly an infinite continuum, or is it simply a cycle that repeats itself eternally? And if time is cyclical, does that mean that events, people, and experiences are fated to happen in the exact same way each time? Or is there room for variation, however small? If we are truly trapped in a loop, how do we come to terms with the seemingly pointless repetition of existence? Would this realization lead to despair, or would it liberate us, freeing us from the pressure to make the most of life, since it's all been lived before? The concept of eternal recurrence also begs the question of meaning. If everything we experience has happened countless times, what significance does anything have? Does it reduce the value of our experiences, making them seem trivial, since they will inevitably happen again? Or does it imbue them with greater meaning, as every moment is part of an infinite cycle, and each choice you make holds infinite weight, even if the outcome is already determined? Perhaps the very fact that you cannot remember your past lives is what allows you to appreciate the present, as each moment, no matter how repetitive, feels fresh and new. Alternatively, the idea of living this life over and over could offer a deeper appreciation for every action and decision. The concept could push you to reconsider how you approach your life, seeing each moment not as a fleeting experience, but as part of a larger cosmic dance. You might come to understand that every choice, no matter how small, contributes to the greater pattern, and your interactions with others are not isolated, but part of an endless weave of connections, stretching across an infinite number of lifetimes. But perhaps the most profound question raised by the notion of eternal recurrence is this: if you've lived this life thousands of times, why do you keep making the same choices? Why do you keep experiencing the same joys and sorrows? Are there no lessons to be learned? Is there no room for growth or change? Or is this endless repetition a form of testing, where you are given endless opportunities to make different choices, yet always find yourself returning to the same path, time and time again? It raises the possibility that you may never truly escape this cycle, not because you lack the ability to change, but because the very nature of existence is defined by this eternal recurrence. While the idea of living the same life over and over might seem like a terrifying, monotonous fate, it also opens up profound possibilities for philosophical exploration. It challenges our concepts of identity, time, and free will, forcing us to confront the nature of our existence in ways we may never have considered. Whether this is a comforting thought, a terrifying one, or simply an unanswerable mystery, the idea of eternal recurrence, living the same life thousands of times, invites us to reconsider what it truly means to live. Are you just the byproduct of a brain that needed to survive? It's a haunting question, one that strips away the poetry of the soul and replaces it with pure, cold biology. We like to think of ourselves as conscious beings with rich inner lives, deep emotions, and complex identities. But what if everything you think you are, your thoughts, your preferences, your memories, your dreams, is nothing more than a side effect? Not a purpose, not a destiny, but just an accident of evolution. A trick your brain developed to keep a body alive a little longer. From an evolutionary standpoint, the human brain wasn't designed for truth, or meaning, or beauty. It was designed to survive, to find food, avoid danger, seek shelter, reproduce. Every neuron, every circuit, every chemical rush of dopamine or flood of cortisol, it's all part of an ancient survival toolkit. And somewhere along the way, out of this desperate machinery, something strange emerged. Consciousness. Self-awareness. You. But what if consciousness isn't a feature, just a bug we fell in love with? What if your sense of I is just the echo of neural activity, a convenient illusion your brain constructed to help manage complex decisions, relationships, and dangers in an increasingly social and unpredictable world? You feel like there's a you in control, a stable identity behind the thoughts. But maybe that's just your brain talking to itself and misinterpreting the feedback loop as someone being there. Think about fear, love, curiosity, anger. All emotions we treat as deeply human, meaningful experiences. But on a biological level, they're chemical signals designed to shape behavior in ways that promote survival and reproduction. You fall in love, not because the universe brought you a soulmate, but because your ancestors, who bonded well with partners, had more offspring. You feel existential dread, not because the universe is cruel, but because the awareness of death helps you make better long-term decisions. The entire rich, emotional tapestry of your life might just be instinctual programming, running in a body optimized for persistence, not profundity. This doesn't mean your experiences aren't real. You feel what you feel. But it raises the unsettling possibility that why you feel them might have little to do with anything noble or transcendent. The poetry of existence might just be a side effect of evolutionary utility. And what about your values? Your sense of morality, justice, purpose? You'd like to think they're rooted in some deeper truth, but maybe they're just adaptive social tools, emerging to keep tribes functional and individuals in check. Maybe even your sense of free will is part of the illusion, a comforting narrative you tell yourself, so the organism doesn't freeze in indecision or despair. If you thought you had no control, maybe you'd give up. So your brain whispers, you chose this, even if everything that led to that choice was already decided by layers of instinct, experience, and chance. So who are you, really? Are you the captain of the ship, steering through stormy seas? Or just the ship itself, reacting to wind and tide and calling it choice? It's a bleak question, but also a clarifying one. If you are the byproduct of a brain that needed to survive, that doesn't make your life meaningless. It makes it extraordinary. Out of raw survival came imagination, laughter, music, art, grief, wonder. Maybe consciousness isn't the point of life, but it is the result of it. And now that it exists, it can ask questions the body never meant to answer, like this one. So maybe the deeper question is not whether you are just the byproduct of a survival machine, but what you choose to become now that you're here. What if you're a placeholder until the real you arrives? It's a quiet, unsettling thought, one that doesn't scream but hums in the background of your life, like a low, persistent question you can't quite locate. What if the person you are right now isn't the final version of you? Not in a metaphorical, self-growth kind of way, but in a literal, existential sense. What if your existence is only temporary scaffolding, a draft copy, a rehearsal, a version meant to fill the space until the real you shows up? Maybe that's why things don't always make sense. Why you feel like you're on the verge of understanding something, only for it to dissolve as soon as you get close. Why you sometimes feel like a stranger to your own thoughts, or like you're living someone else's life on accident. You go through the motions, you do what's expected, but somewhere inside, there's this lingering suspicion. This isn't quite it. I'm not quite me yet. What if you're a vessel waiting to be occupied? A structure being tested? The mind you call your own might not be final, just a simulation running scenarios, collecting data, preparing the environment, preparing you. Maybe the real you is still forming, somewhere beyond this timeline, or buried deep within layers of identity you haven't yet shed. Maybe this current self is just the prologue, not meant to last. It would explain the silence you sometimes feel behind your own thoughts, the hollow echo of choices that feel performative, the sense that life is happening to you more than through you. Maybe that's because the script was never really yours. You're just reading the lines until the real writer shows up. It sounds strange, maybe even terrifying. But consider this. What if being a placeholder isn't a flaw, but a phase, a necessary transition? Maybe the only way to become the real you is to first live as the not you. Maybe this current self is the cocoon, and all the confusion, dissatisfaction, and longing you feel is just the pressure building before the emergence. Maybe the reason life feels so unfinished is because you are. Or maybe, and this is the darker possibility, the real you never comes. Maybe you're the only version there is, and the idea that a truer self is on its way is just a defense mechanism, a way to cope with the dissonance of never feeling whole. Maybe we all walk through life, half complete, half asleep, telling ourselves we're still becoming, because the alternative, that this is it, is too much to bear. But then again, what if you do arrive one day, without warning? What if, in some quiet moment, not a grand revelation, but something subtle, you suddenly feel it, a click, a shift. The placeholder steps aside, and the real you steps in. No fireworks, no announcement, just a calm sense of, oh, I'm here now, and everything begins to make sense. Until then, maybe the placeholder matters more than it seems. Maybe it's not just waiting space. Maybe it's the space in which you're built, the outline that teaches you your shape, the mask that eventually lets you find your face underneath. What if everyone you know is a fragment of you? Not just metaphorically, not just in the poetic sense that we project our fears, hopes, and longings onto others, but literally. What if every person you've ever met, loved, hated, envied, or admired is just another piece of you, refracted through the prism of consciousness to appear separate? A single mind, split into characters, trying to understand itself from every possible angle. You go through life thinking of yourself as one self among many, a singular I floating in a sea of other eyes. Friends, strangers, enemies, family. You experience them as external, as independent entities, each with their own motives, memories, desires. But what if that separation is an illusion? What if they're not other at all? What if they're echoes, reflections? What if your consciousness is so vast, so complicated, that it had to break itself into pieces just to begin to comprehend its own complexity? It's a disorienting idea, because it means that every interaction you've ever had was essentially with yourself. The person who broke your heart, a shard of your own capacity for pain and disconnection. The friend who made you laugh until your stomach hurt, a mirror of the joy you carry but forgot how to find alone. The stranger who brushed past you on the street without a word. A glimpse of the part of you that longs to be unnoticed, unbothered, anonymous. This perspective reframes everything. Every relationship becomes a dialogue with yourself. Every argument is an internal conflict made visible. Every act of compassion is self-care projected outward. Even betrayal, grief, and loss are no longer assaults from the outside world. They're eruptions from within. It's not that people aren't real. It's that their reality might be something other than what we assumed. They're not figments of imagination, but facets of a singular soul playing the long game of self-discovery. There's something profoundly humbling about the possibility that we're not as alone as we think. not because others are here, but because they are us. It means that empathy isn't a virtue, it's a recognition. Forgiveness isn't grace, it's memory. Love isn't a bridge, it's a return. You were never supposed to conquer the world around you. You were supposed to understand it, and in doing so, realize that you were understanding yourself. But the idea also comes with a strange kind of existential weight. If everyone you know is a fragment of you, then every injustice, every cruelty, every act of ignorance you witness in the world is yours to own. You can't fully hate anyone without hating a part of yourself. You can't dismiss or dehumanize without dimming your own light. The world is no longer out there, it's inside, and it reflects you back in every possible form, noble and petty, brilliant and dull, beautiful and broken. It also begs the question, why? Why would a single consciousness fracture itself into billions of seemingly distinct beings? Maybe it's the only way to simulate growth, to create friction, conflict, harmony, and healing. Maybe unity without contrast is stagnant. Perhaps you need to forget yourself in order to rediscover yourself. Maybe you had to become everyone in order to truly know anyone. And what happens when you realize this, not just as an idea, but as a felt experience? Do the lines between people blur? Does loneliness fade? Or does it grow sharper, knowing that every connection you've longed for was already there, hidden within? Maybe enlightenment isn't about transcending the self. Maybe it's about seeing the self in all things, not in a mystical, float above your body sense, but in the grounded awareness that when you speak to someone, you're speaking to another room in the same house. In this view, death changes shape too. When someone dies, a fragment returns. A reflection vanishes, but not because it was lost, because the mirror was no longer needed. They don't leave you, they were you. And maybe you carry them forward in your very being, because you were never really separate to begin with. So the next time you look at someone, anyone, try asking yourself, what part of me are they? What truth are they holding that I haven't yet faced? What memory are they keeping alive? What lesson are they waiting to teach? And if everyone is a fragment of you, maybe the goal was never to find your people, but to remember them, to recognize yourself in them, and in the end, to gather every piece until you become whole again. Could your life be a test you were never meant to pass? It's an unsettling thought, isn't it? That everything you're doing, every effort you make, every failure you face, every time you fall short, might not be part of some linear climb towards success or transcendence, but rather part of a test designed not to be passed, but to see how you carry on knowing you probably never will. What if life isn't a problem to be solved, or a puzzle to be completed, but a labyrinth with no exit? And the only real test is whether you keep walking. We often assume that life is about improvement, progress, mastery, that with enough work and wisdom, we'll eventually get it right. But this view hides a deeper anxiety. The belief that if we fail to figure it all out, if we don't hit the right notes, we've wasted something precious, that we've failed. But what if the test isn't about winning, it's about enduring? Not because there's a final grade, but because the conditions themselves are the point. Like a dream that doesn't want to be solved, only wandered. In this vision, your pain, confusion, and longing aren't signs that you're doing something wrong. They're part of the design. They're the curriculum. You don't get out of this with the right answers. You move through it by asking better questions. Or maybe you don't move through it at all. Maybe you just sit with it, and that's the point. Maybe the test isn't about who you become, but about what remains when there's nothing left to become. It's a humbling idea, because it suggests you're not the main character in some grand narrative meant to wrap up neatly by the final page. You're not here to win. You're here to see what happens when you don't. When the doors don't open. When the stars don't align. When you give your all and the universe answers with silence. How do you respond? Do you collapse? Do you harden? Or do you soften, breathe, and continue anyway? It's easy to think of life like a video game. Levels to beat, upgrades to earn, bosses to defeat. But maybe it's more like a Zen koan, designed to break your mind open, not to make logical sense. Maybe suffering isn't a sign you're off track. Maybe it is the track. Maybe joy isn't a reward. Maybe it's a flicker that reminds you how light dances in the darkest places. The test was never about escape. It was about staying. Imagine this life as a maze with invisible walls. Every turn feels new, but from above, it's just circles. You pray, try, change your diet, read philosophy, chase love, lose it, rebuild. You seek purpose. You think you find it. Then it slips again. You begin to realize the patterns aren't mistakes. They are the pattern. The repetition isn't a flaw in the system. It is the system. You weren't meant to break out of it. You were meant to see how deeply you can remain human within it. Maybe you were never meant to fix your flaws, just to face them. Maybe passing the test is a misunderstanding, like trying to win at music or solve a sunset. You don't pass a test like this. You inhabit it. You endure. You feel. You cry. You laugh at absurd moments. You love people who hurt you. You forgive yourself too late. You try again and again. Not because it will save you, but because that's what it means to be conscious. That's what it means to carry a soul through a burning world. Think of the moments when life feels most unbearable, the heartbreaks, the disappointments, the slow, aching weight of disillusionment. In those moments, doesn't it feel like someone, something, is watching? Like the test is becoming harder precisely when you feel weakest. And yet, something inside you keeps going. Maybe that is the test. Not, did you win? But did you keep your heart open when it begged to close? Not, did you reach enlightenment? But did you show kindness when it wasn't rewarded? Not, did you figure it out? But did you keep asking even when there were no answers? And maybe the cruelest beauty of all is this. No one tells you the rules. No one hands you a syllabus. There are no grades, no feedback forms, no guiding voice in the sky. You're handed consciousness, fragile, confused, awestruck consciousness, and dropped into a world of contradictions, love and war, beauty and decay, hope and futility. You ask, why am I here? And the universe says nothing. Maybe because silence is the only honest answer. But here's the twist. If the test is not meant to be passed, if life is not about arrival, but about presence, then maybe you're not failing. Maybe you can't fail. Because there's nothing to win, only experience to bear witness to. Maybe the point was never to reach peace, but to choose peace even when chaos reigns. Maybe the goal isn't to become something, but to be something. Even when the world gives you every reason not to be. You might be exhausted. You might be tired of trying. And that's okay. Maybe the deepest part of the test is to feel that exhaustion and still offer love to someone else. To feel empty and still choose kindness. To feel like you're drowning and still whisper, I'm here to someone else who is too. Not because it saves you, but because it's the most honest response a soul can give. Could your life be a test you were never meant to pass? Maybe, but maybe the real question is, who do you become when you stop trying to pass and just start showing up anyway?